people would ask me, how I got into a certain sport or, what my background was or whatever. And I said, I've always sort of had the point of view that I didn't want to be sitting in a rocking chair when I was 80 years old saying, gosh, if I'd only done that when I was, 28 or 34 or whatever years old. I didn't want to look back and say, why didn't I do that when I had the chance?
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Tyke.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Community Foundation in support of the Adirondack Community Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, baby.
Oh, yeah. All hi-hat all the time here on Northwards.
NPR really loves Flea lately. Have you noticed that?
I have not noticed that.
They have done like...
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? It's because Flea is coming out or has come out with a jazz record.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Wow, I learned all sorts of things.
Do you listen to the station? You're the station manager.
I don't know.
No defense.
I don't have a good answer for that.
Flea is an interesting character, but it's NPR they went from Taylor Swift to Lin-Manuel Miranda, and now they're on to Flea. Who will be next?
You're saying Flea stories and Flea interviews are appearing on all different programs.
Frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think primarily because he's a wild rock musician doing a jazz record. Yeah. I don't know.
Once again, NPR proves that their producers never talk to each other. This has been, and this is inside baseball, but I have now been in public radio since 1994. And
long time.
There have been conversations about, don't these guys talk to each other? Literally since before I started in public radio.
Yeah.
But the phenomenon of somebody being interviewed on Fresh Air and then you hear them on All Things Considered, and then oh my God, there they are on Weekend Edition Sunday and or 1A or whatever. But good for Flea.
Good for Flea. I've seen how relevant podcasts have become just because like celebrity guests are appearing on all of the shows, all of the podcasts that I listen to.
That's another.
And it's like,
issue.
Well, this is great, but like I listen to these, 4 or 5 shows and the same guest is on all 4 or 5 shows. Yep. Like, you get a different thing out of all of them, I guess, because of the, sometimes they're friends with the host or sometimes they're perfect strangers. So the chemistry is a little bit different. But it's like, I don't want to hear about your book 5 times in a row.
Celebrity podcasts have really become the late night talk shows
Totally.
Of the 21st century and a half.
Do you still watch any late night talk shows?
I, from time to time, I'll tune into to Jimmy Kimmel, who I think is the most acerbic of the late night talk show hosts. I mean, I miss Letterman. I miss Craig Ferguson. But so every once in a while. And, I think the other thing about the celebrity podcasts, though, is that we're at a point where someone who's doing a book tour doesn't even have to leave their house.
Totally.
Whereas,
because the pandemic changed all that and normalized it. Yeah. Like probably a lot of people my age, I watch clips of late night shows on YouTube.
Primarily how I consume them as well.
Okay. So you're not like, it's not appointment viewing for you.
No, we
Was
don't
it
have
ever?
it. We don't. I mean, it was back in. I mean, I have very vivid memories of tuning in to Letterman as Letterman aired while I was in high school. And I mean, I still someplace in my collection have VHS tapes of Letterman shows that I recorded either on purpose because I wanted to save them or because, I'm not going to be able to watch Letterman tonight. I'll set the VCR to record him.
Right. Yeah. And
because there was no, let's go watch him on YouTube later.
Right. And that probably never even occurred to you that someday this is all just going to be in a digital archive somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. Who are we talking to today?
We are talking to a guy who I felt like as we were having this interview, and you'll hear me say it at one point, he's kind of a Forrest Gump of his own world, a guy named Mark Friden. He is a historian, town historian in Star Lake. And at the same time, he has this whole wealth of weird life experiences that if you just encountered him at Stewart's or whatever, you would never imagine that this guy had this life. But he had a competitive figure skating career. He worked for ABC on figure skating broadcasts.
Okay.
And while all that was going on, he also learned to do rodeos. So he was a professional bull rider at one point. He has been an international luge judge.
How does he have time for all this?
That's an excellent question. And that is why I sat down in his dining room and asked him many questions.
My house is what a lot of people describe as a museum just because of all the things that I collect. And I like to be surrounded by things that I like and enjoy and things that bring back memories of good things that happened in the past.
Yeah, well, and I was looking at one item and it reminded me, it's funny, when I was young, probably, 10 years old, and my dad was a college professor at the time, and he would have cocktail parties at the house sometimes. And I think to keep me out of the hair of everybody that would come to these parties, I, got not really sent to my room, but I went to my room and would entertain occasional guests who were, I guess, grad students or whatever. But I had my collections out and I had interpretive signs in front of them. And looking at there's a rivet from the original Golden Gate Bridge that you have a sign next to, and it just reminded me of that, and I felt instantly at home.
Yeah, I have some mineral samples from over here in Benson Mines. It's amazing how many different minerals you can find there. I had no idea. I'm not a mineralogist or a collector, but somebody had told me about a mineralogy magazine that had a feature about Benson Mines, and I had to get a copy of this. I was historian for the town of Clifton over in Cranberry Lake at the time. This magazine was full of all these color pictures of all these different minerals. Well, I started collecting a few of them myself, and I thought, wait a minute. First of all, I might not remember what these are. But second of all, somebody might not know and ask. So I had a little sign out with those. I put them away since. But
Have you always been a collector? I mean, were you a kid that collected things?
I don't know. It doesn't start that way, but it's how it ends up. I guess always, all my life. One place that's always been a constant in my life has been Cranberry Lake. My grandparents moved there to live year-round back in the 1930s. My dad was an only child, but they moved up in the summer, and my dad started school in Cranberry Lake in the fall, and we would always come back on vacation and what have you.
You were growing up in Illinois, is that right?
Yeah, in Illinois at that time. Then our family, we relocated back to New York State, and it became 6-hour drive as opposed to an overnight drive. But anything that had to deal with the Adirondacks, I just fell in love with it. The Adirondack Park and we just mesh together.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It just seems like it's the perfect place. The fact that we have the Adirondack Park Agency was a real bone of contention when that first started. I remember reading about the meetings. They had public information meetings, and how the people that came from the APA to talk to the public, the meeting would finish, they'd come out and see that their cars had been keyed by irate people who said, "You're not going to tell me what to do with my land." That was the general sentiment. But I always had a topographic map of Cranberry Lake on the wall in my bedroom, even when I was a child.
And here we are, years later, and we're in your dining room, and there's not a topographic map, but there is a watercolor of Cranberry Lake right over your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did a kid who grew up visiting his grandparents in Cranberry Lake get launched into the somewhat unusual and kind of circuitous career surrounding languages and sports and all the various things that have marked your life over the years?
It's funny, when I went off to college, my father was insistent. He said, "You will be a business major." I'm like, "Business? Why? I hate that." He said, "This is what you need to do. This is what I'm telling you you will do, so we will do this." And economics and statistics and business law, wasn't for me. When I was in high school, I took, from 7th grade through 12th, I took 6 years of Spanish. I had to get permission from the Board of Education to also take French, because there just apparently were not a lot of hours in the day for things like this. But I got into taking French classes in high school. At that time, I don't know if it's the same as now, but at that time, the first Regents exam would be like in French 3. Well, I was taking French 2, and I had to get permission. After having gotten permission to take the class, I had to get permission to take the French 3 Regents exam as a student from French 2. But being an honor student, I'd always had like 102 or 103 as my grade for the grading period. My teacher was definitely behind me, and I ended up getting the highest score in my school, even though I had one less year of French. I got off to college, and once I was able to figure out how to get away from the School of Business as quickly as possible, I became a linguistics major, using all of my credits for advanced placement out of high school. I was taking junior year courses in Spanish and French as a freshman at Indiana University, which has a wonderful linguistics department. An awful lot of foreign students from all over the place go to school there, and a lot of them take on teaching jobs. So I had native speakers for, well, the wildest things. I had a minor in Russian, native speaker. I had a minor in Swahili, native speaker. And I know you're going to ask, so I'll jump the gun here. To get a degree in linguistics, you had to have a minor in any non-Indo-European language of your choice. At that time, all of my friends that I hung out with from the linguistics department, they were all taking Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean. I said, I'm going to do something different. So just like out of thin air, Swahili. And again, I had a native speaker as a teacher. But
do I remember your first attempt to learn Swahili? Were you the only student in the class?
Actually, that happened with a different language. I'd already gone through a few years of Russian, and I became intrigued by the language of Azerbaijan, which is called Azerbaijani. And I knew it was another Slavic language derived from Russian primarily. I wanted to see how different it was from Russian and what made it special and different and unique. So I enrolled in it, had my little class card and everything, and showed up the first day, and there was nobody there. And I'm waiting, and I'm looking at the card, I'm like, am I in the right building? Is it the right day of the week? Is it the right time? And nobody came. So I went to the linguistics office, and I said, I was supposed to be taking Azerbaijani. And the secretary says, oh, you're the one that signed up. I'm like, 30,000+ students on campus, and I'm the only one that registered for Azerbaijani.
It's a shame, otherwise we would be having this interview in Azerbaijani.
One of the other interesting things that happened, first day of a conversational French class, I was sitting there, and we had a lot of foreign students, as I mentioned. This young woman comes in with a brightly colored, I don't know, caftan or whatever. Her hair was all done up and had this brilliantly colored wrap around her hair. Come to find out that she was the daughter of the president of Kenya. So Swahili was like her native language, but here we are in conversational French. And our professor for the French class, she said, well, this is French. This is conversational French. I don't want to hear anything but French from any of you once I walk in the door. Well, Janie, that was her name, Janie Kenyatta, and we'd get there early because I like to practice my Swahili with her. I mean, it was great. And We both got in trouble so many times for speaking Swahili in conversational French class.
She could not claim diplomatic immunity in this case.
Maybe she could, but I couldn't.
Well, so given that background, it wouldn't be impossible to imagine that the two of us would be sitting here in 2026 having a conversation about your long career as a college linguistics professor. But instead, you went down some interesting roads that included, let's start with figure skating.
Yeah, I had always been drawn to figure skating as a kid. We didn't really have anything hockey-like going on where I lived, but I distinctly remember when anything figure skating was on TV, my father was very interested in watching it. And I remember him yelling at the TV, "How could that judge from Hungary give that person a 5.4? And things like this. It's like I was really interested to see more about this, and eventually I got started taking lessons, but it was much too late actually for
you were not 40 years old at this point.
Right. I mean, for serious competition, it was much too late for that. I did get into competition though. I knew I wasn't going to be involved in singles skating. I started in pairs, and I had a pair partner. We worked on all these lifts and everything, and then she decided she wasn't interested in pairs so much. She went back to ice dance, and I thought, maybe ice dance is an avenue I should look at. The thing with ice dancing is there are like 50 girls for every guy. So finding a partner was not difficult. Got into ice dancing and went into competition. Back then, the United States was divided into 3 sections. Each section was divided into 3 regions. And you entered at the regional level based on the tests that you had passed. So I went into competition at the regional level with a partner. We qualified to get onto sectionals, which kind of knocked my socks off, but that was fun. And then I'd gotten to know a lot of people in figure skating from where I had trained before. I had trained in Wilmington, Delaware, also in Colorado Springs. Now I was living in California, all of which are great training areas for figure skating. And I got to meet a lot of people. What happened was kind of just being in the right place at the right time. I knew this woman, this girl, we were same age. She was from Belgium, and she had worked for Eurosport covering figure skating as their technical consultant. So she would fly back to Europe and cover the European figure skating championships. Again, like many other people in Europe, like most people in Europe, she knew several languages, as did I. It came to one year when she had a conflict. She was also working every year for ABC television for the national championships. And there was a conflict for her one year. Nationals and Europeans were the same week, and she couldn't do both. So she decided she was going to stick with Eurosport and go to Europeans. ABC said, hey, we need somebody who knows this sport inside and out, knows the rules, knows the people, knows the competitors, knows the coaches. Can you recommend anybody? And she gave them, I think, like 3 names. And I got a phone call one day from somebody in production, asked me all these questions, and next thing you know, I was working for ABC as their technical consultant for figure skating.
Well, for people who don't understand it, not figure skating, but the work of televised figure skating, what does a technical consultant do?
There are actually people like this for almost every sport. Of course, being the technical consultant for something like football, basketball, everybody knows all about these sports. Other sports at that time, we're talking like back in the early 80s, things like competitive figure skating were shown on TV once a year. They didn't have people that worked for ABC full-time on staff that knew this sport inside and out. So they brought somebody on. They used to call him a deal person. So I was the deal person for ABC for figure skating. What that usually meant was I would go to the practice sessions. This is well before anybody had cameras, phones with cameras,
right.
or any of the modern electronic devices we have today. I would go to the practice sessions and record on paper, a list of all the moves this skater was doing for his or her free skating program. And then I would end up typing this up on cards. And I'd give the cards to Dick Button and Peggy Fleming. So I worked with them very closely, make sure that they could understand what I was talking about. And it also meant that during the actual competition, I would be seated right at the end of the row of judges with the headsets on so I could talk to the production trucks out in the back. And all of a sudden, somebody's skating their program, and all of a sudden the music stops. And immediately, through my headset, I'm hearing, her music stopped. What's going to happen next? Does she have to restart the whole thing? She can restart from there. What's the rule? What's going to happen? So I knew these things and got to tell them what the options were. Or, somebody broke their skate, like whatever happened.
Right.
Of course, there were always questions like, okay, well, this skater got marks of 5.8 and 5.6. Now, what does the next skater need to beat them? It was amazing. And after that, when that first year ended, one of the production assistants said to me, hey, you live in Oklahoma City. We're coming to Oklahoma a couple times this year to do college football. Are you interested in working college football for us?
Figure skating.
So this was something new for me. And it was hilarious because everybody in Oklahoma is a fan of either Oklahoma State or OU. And I had friends there that had been on the waiting list for better season tickets for the OU Sooners forever. So they're sitting like up in row double Z at the top of the upper deck. I waltz in, just moved to Oklahoma City, and I've got a pass to be on the sidelines. How did you do this?
And you're working as a technical consultant in this as well?
No, not really. I was just helping out production, and the guys that did the sideline reports had access to the locker rooms, and all that stuff. But it wasn't nearly as important as my position was for figure skating. But that's one thing that sort of fell out of figure skating. But
national championships were really your foot in the door to television.
Exactly.
But then you stuck with figure skating as well, right? I mean, you went from this one, sort of fill-in gig to work in the Olympics for ABC.
Well, yeah, like I said, that first year working at the National Figure Skating Championships for ABC, the production assistants that I worked for, wasn't the actual producer that got in touch with me, rang me up one day and said, we really, really liked your work, and we want to know if you'd be interested in coming back to work for us next year. I said, oh, yeah, sure, I can be available for nationals. And they said, oh, well, yeah, nationals too, but we mean the Olympics. I'm like, what? You want me to be your technical consultant for figure skating at the Olympics in Sarajevo? This was 1984.
Right.
So, yeah. Torval and Dean skating to Bolero, and Kitty and Peter Carruthers, and Scott Hamilton, and all the big names that were winning then. And I, again, going to all the practice sessions, except during the event, I wasn't sitting next to the judges. During the events, I was sitting in the ABC booth at the end of the rink. That was probably one of the most exciting things I've ever done.
I bet. When you think back to the Olympics in 1984 in Sarajevo, and as we're having this conversation, we're not that far past the most recent Winter Olympics. The Olympic experience has kind of changed a little bit.
Oh, it has. It definitely has. I kind of left out a chapter here real quick, but 4 years before Sarajevo, I worked at the Olympics in Lake Placid, and it sort of had a figure skating connection. When the 1980 Winter Olympics were coming up, I was the head cashier at an American Express office in the financial district in San Francisco. 1979, early 79, people were coming in saying, do you guys have any information about any tour packages to Lake Placid, to the Olympics? And like, no, I haven't really seen anything there, but I'll keep an eye out. I found a tour operator that was down the peninsula. He had been doing tour packages to the World Championships and Olympics for a long time, and he catered to the families and friends of figure skating competitors, and not just Americans from all over the place, all over the world. And I started talking to him on the phone, and then he said he found out I was from the Adirondacks. He found out that I was a skater, and he said, how would you like to come to Lake Placid and work for me at the Olympics? And I said, well, what do I have to do? He says, well, you can be in charge of all of our tickets and making sure that people get to the events they want to get to. And so that was my first Olympic experience, but just by coincidence, it also happened to do with figure skating. So figure skating really opened the door for me to a lot of different things.
So where in all of this does rodeo come in?
That's interesting. Right after college, I'd been a lifeguard at a lodge in Carmel Valley, California, which is very close to Salinas. And in Salinas, the biggest thing that happened there all year was the annual rodeo. At that time, there was what they called the Big Four, which were 4 rodeos that were the premier events. There was the Calgary Stampede, Cheyenne Frontier Days, the Pendleton Roundup in Oregon, and the California Rodeo in Salinas. There were illuminated night parades. All the stores downtown painted their windows, and everybody got into this. And I had not been to a rodeo before. And I said, well, I got to jump in here and be a local. So I'm going to the rodeo, and I'm like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me this cowboy sits on the back of a bull for 8 seconds and wins thousands of dollars? I can do that.
I think there are a lot of us who think 8 seconds isn't really that long at all, right?
Let me tell you, when you're on the back of a bull, it's an eternity.
So you just tried it.
If you can even make it to 8 seconds. Me and rodeo, it started out as in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time, or whatever. But I remember I was talking to my ice dance coaches one day about this, and they said, what? You want to be a bull rider? No. She says, you have to think about your partner. You're not the only one competing here. You've got a partner that you're training with all these hours, spending all this money on lessons and travel and everything. If you go into a rodeo and hurt yourself, it takes your partner out of the equation as well. So they said, absolutely not. You're not riding anything more dangerous than an escalator. But years later, my job transferred me to Oklahoma. And I did some research, made some phone calls, and learned about a stock contractor that brought his stock, I think it was on a Wednesday night, to an arena in Yukon, Oklahoma. And you could go there and pay, I think it was $5 or $10 a ride. If you were just beginning to learn, they would tell you what the bull normally did. They'd say, okay, this bull is older, a little bit slower, but when we open the gate and you come out on the bull will turn to its left and circle 3 times and then go off on a straight shot. That's what it does like 99% of the time. So by knowing what to anticipate, that's how you learned how to stay on, keep your balance, and watch for the signals from the animal as to what it was going to do. And so I started doing that. I'd go to these buckouts and learn how to ride. And then it got to the point where they'd use, stronger, younger bulls. And then they would say, okay, we're not going to tell you what this one usually does. You've not ridden this one before, so watch the shoulders, watch the head, and good luck. I went to jackpot buckouts where you'd pay a certain fee to ride, and it was like, okay, once you get bucked off before 8 seconds, that's it, you're out. And if you keep on going, then you could win money. And I did those, I don't know, I think the last one I remember was in some small town in Oklahoma. There were like 50 or 60 guys. New Year's Eve. But my best sport actually was steer wrestling. I did better at that. I wasn't really not the best physical shape for a bull rider. Bull riders are usually really thin and short. Their center of gravity is low. And I'm just a shade over 6 feet tall, which is tall for a bull rider. I had so much fun doing this and learning it. And I met so many great guys and had so much fun with it.
I imagine the Venn diagram of people who have been in both ice dance regionals and sectionals, and people who have done bull riding and steer wrestling, that the Venn diagram overlap is probably just you.
I think you're right.
Do you feel a little like Forrest Gump in some way?
In fact, it's funny. One year, I was working at Nationals, figure skating,
Right.
for ABC, and a brother-sister pair team, Kim and Wayne Siebold, they were from Indiana, and I was talking to them one day in the arena at Nationals, and this reporter came up and he said, "Oh, I'm so glad I caught up with you guys. I want to ask you some questions." And Wayne was so funny. He said, "This is the guy you should be talking to." And he points at me. He said, "This is the only bull riding ice dancer that you'll ever meet in your whole." And sure enough, he did a little interview with me. And then later on, I got a copy of the article that ran in the newspaper in Fort Wayne.
Figure skating, college football, rodeo. We're talking, and you're wearing a bobsled and skeleton, or a luge. You're wearing an Altenburg hat.
This cap that I'm wearing was from the bobsled and skeleton world championships in Altenburg, Germany. But yeah, as I decided that my time as a competitive bull rider, steer wrestler, calf roper was coming to an end, that I needed to move on. So I moved on to becoming a certified rodeo judge, which took me all over the place. I judged rodeos in Denver, Calgary, Tucson, Phoenix, Colorado Springs, even in some cities like Chicago. And that came to its end. And then outside of this, in my real life, all of the pieces finally lined up. There was a syzygy, if you will, where the planets aligned.
Excellent word.
And one of my favorite words. I don't always get to use
It's a good Scrabble word.
Everything lined up. I had been downsized out of my job. I was living in Houston. Downsized out of my job. The townhouse condo I was living in had been broken into. And when I called the property management people, they said, "Oh, by the way, the guy that owns all these townhouses has decided he doesn't want to rent them anymore. So you either have to buy it or move out." And actually this happened about, maybe 5 months after my father passed away. But he, as it turns out, had left some money to my brother and I. So here I am with no place to live, no job, and I've come into a little bit of money. And I said, this is it. I'm finally going to move back to the Adirondacks. I've wanted to live back here full-time, year-round, all my life, really. So I came back to Saranac Lake, is where I ended up going. Made a job hunting trip, landed a job as operations manager in a lumber yard. And I get settled in Saranac Lake, and I'm like, no, wait a minute. There's not a lot of rodeo action going on here. And I'm way past, age-wise, way past doing anything with skating. And I'd been sort of out of ABC's picture for a few years. And I said, I just really miss being involved in a sport from an official standpoint, official point of view. And kind of out of the blue, I just said, luge. I don't know why. Luge is a very small sport. It's it's not like following the NBA or anything like that. Everybody knows everybody. The officials know all the competitors from different countries. We know all the coaches. It's really small, I guess is the best way to sum the whole thing up. I got involved immediately with volunteering and starting my training. This was the same time as the Olympics in Salt Lake in 2002.
Yeah.
Right. And they said, well, normally we'd really push fast to get you moving in this program, but we all have so much to do right now getting ready for the Olympics. You can help us with a few things at a few of the races and get your feet wet, but then we'll really start seriously after the Olympics are over. And in no time flat, I was a national level official. And then again, in no time flat after that, world and Olympic level official. So that was how I got into luge.
Do you feel like learning all of these sports, the ins and outs, is a little, in some ways, like learning different languages?
There's certainly an awful lot that you need to know if you're going to be an official. You can't just say, okay, this event is happening right now. I'll get back to you in 2 hours once I've had a chance to research it. No, you had to know everything. You had to be reliable. That was one thing that really helped me in being a rodeo judge. Rodeo associations would look at the officials and they could tell if somebody was biased towards competitors from their own state or area. I would be hired to work at an association's rodeo and always got compliments and thanks afterwards. And at least 2 or 3 times when a certain rodeo was over, the organizing committee people came up to me and they said, we really weren't sure what kind of a rodeo judge you'd be. Some people told us they thought you'd be biased towards the cowboys and cowgirls from Texas, where you live. And other people said, no, I don't think he's like that. I think he'll be good for us. Let's take a chance with him. And they liked my work. There were times when I would end up scoring a bull rider higher than he'd ever had a score because he deserved it. And by then, this person would win the event and take home a buckle from that rodeo. And they said, that proved it. That same organization would then bring me back the next year and the year after.
As you think about your life in all of these sort of disparate worlds, is there kind of one thing that you think ties them all together, I mean, besides languages, but I mean, something that really defines who Mark Friden is and what he's about?
I'm sure there is, and if I think about it, I'm sure I could come up with a good answer for that. But
let me hazard a guess without wanting to put words in your mouth, because you took me on a bit of a tour around your house, and you made the observation about yourself that you kind of collect collections. And I wondered, as you're talking about this, whether one of the things that you collect has really just been experiences.
Yeah, that's I never thought of it that way, but I think you've hit that nail on the head. My philosophy, as far as, let's face it, I did not grow up going to a high school that had a rodeo team and then rodeoed through college and everything. I started this much later in life. But yeah, the experience was definitely the big attraction.
I mean, I wonder if there's like a lesson in all of this that, you're sort of never too old to reinvent yourself or to you can teach an old dog new tricks or something.
Well, people would ask me, how I got into a certain sport or, what my background was or whatever. And I said, I've always sort of had the point of view that I didn't want to be sitting in a rocking chair when I was 80 years old saying, gosh, if I'd only done that when I was, 28 or 34 or whatever years old. I didn't want to look back and say, why didn't I do that when I had the chance? I started competitive figure skating later than most kids were pushed into it. Definitely started rodeo late. But luge, I never competed in luge, but I, again, got involved as a official.
Mark Friden, thank you so much, and let's talk again soon.
You're very welcome. Been a pleasure.
Mark Friden is a man about the world, a guy who has a gazillion credentials hanging from his wall. Most recently, he's been a town historian in Star Lake, New York, and in the greater Star Lake, Wanakina Metroplex. I had a great time talking with him, and I'm grateful that he welcomed me into his house.
The Forrest Gump of the North Country is how you characterized him at the start, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as accidental as the whole Forrest Gump story, but really, maybe call him a Renaissance man.
I think that's more fair.
But luge judge, figure skating competitor, professional bull rider, consultant to ABC on figure skating, all sorts of sideline work at college football games for a while. Just a really interesting guy, and grateful that I had a chance to chat with him at his house.
A person of many, many hats. A jack of all trades.
Yes, many hats, and I brought him one of our hats. I'm like tapping this hat on my head as though it's an NCPR hat. It is not.
Is it the one with your face on it?
Did I give him? Yeah, I think he does have the one.
Okay.
Where I thought it was your face.
It'll work.
Yeah.
Either one. I told you about a person. I went into this gas station to pick up a soda. I told you this, right? And,
yes.
And the kid said, "Where's your hat with your face on it?" And I was delighted. Have you ever read? Since you brought it up, have you ever read Forrest Gump, the book?
By Winston Groom.
Yes.
No.
It is delightful.
I know just enough about it to know that Winston Groom wrote it. It's delightful.
It's delightful. Yeah, I was in a phase where I was reading novelizations, right? And of course, the novel of Forrest Gump is not a novelization. It's what Forrest Gump became as a movie. But I just kind of was in that mode. That's where my heart was for a couple of months. I read the novelization of Lethal Weapon, which was honestly amazing.
Delightful is probably not the right word for it. I mean,
For
maybe
Lethal Weapon?
Yeah,
No, it was
yeah,
really,
yeah.
really dark
Yeah.
and brooding. But my thought...
Delightful in a dark way,
Well,
or
like
dark in a delightful way.
Novelization served the purpose of that video rental stores did in a way, right? Because like you could take the book home and you could relive the movie and like not have to pay the really expensive premium to have it in your home, you know.
Yeah.
And this obviously precedes the days of like home video rental and owning a movie. Anyway, so like this is a huge aside, but I've read a bunch of novelizations, okay, and you don't expect anything from the author other than to basically transcribe.
Tell you
the
what
movie.
happened in the movie. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the publishers expect the exact same thing. Like, here is a flat rate. Give us this book in like 3 weeks or whatever. And so when I opened up Lethal Weapon, I was like, oh, whatever. I think my back was hurt and I was sitting on the couch. I was like, I can't move anyway, so I might as well read this. And it was awesome. Like, this author did way more work than he had to, and like brought these characters to life, and it was really dark and brooding and introspective.
Huh.
Anyway,
I kind of want to go read it.
I'll lend it to you. I mean,
You should have blurbed the book. You know, it's like a perfect book for an injured back.
listen, it's not capital L literature, but I guess when your expectation is Lethal Weapon,
Right.
and you get something that's a little bit more heightened than that, you know, you're pleasantly surprised. But
Forrest Gump.
It's honestly delightful. It's nothing like the movie. The characters basically share a name, and he is.
The movie was a little heavy-handed, I gotta say.
I love the movie.
I mean, the
but you're
movie
right.
is good, but
it is heavy-handed. You know, it's like almost like sickly sweet.
Yeah,
you know?
a little bit.
And the book is
It's
not
like a box of chocolates.
You could say that. You could say that. But like they share like almost none of the same DNA. The guy's name is Forrest Gump, and he does a lot, and he's from the South. But like he becomes a pro wrestler.
Huh.
He becomes a leading candidate for Congress after that. He goes to space. He befriends an orangutan. When he comes back down from space, he crash lands on an island of cannibals and has to play chess to get out of it.
To the degree that if they had made a movie about it, you would have said, "Oh, give me a break." But
Right. But I loved it. I was like laughing so hard I was crying. So pick up Forrest Gump. This is our endorsement for Forrest Gump and Lethal Weapon, the books.
and read them back to back. Which would you recommend we read first? I kind of feel like you'd want the aftertaste of Forrest Gump.
I think so too. Yeah, you got to get your meat and potatoes with Lethal Weapon, and then you have your dessert with Forrest Gump.
I will say that my first experience with a novelization was the novelization of the James Bond movie For Your Eyes Only, which is bizarre because it was a book before it was a movie,
right.
and then they wrote a novelization of the movie, which was based on the book.
See, I'm fascinated by that because I've heard of that before, where they turn a book into a movie and then they novelize it.
Right.
So strange. Just like, why not? Wouldn't it be cheaper to just
reprint the book?
To just put the movie poster
cover,
on
yes. Well, and I was really confused about it because I had not. This was, I was probably a freshman in high school. I remember reading the novelization on the bus as we were going to like the ski club ski trip at Ski Liberty in Pennsylvania, which I just drove past yesterday, actually, on my way home from D.C., and it's now called Liberty Mountain. But I remember reading it and thinking it felt different than the other James Bond books I had read, because I had a whole collection of the original Ian Fleming books. And this seemed different for some reason, and then realizing that it was not actually written by Ian Fleming.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Again, wouldn't it have just been cheaper?
But they were worried that people would pick it up and say, I don't want literature. I want a book.
Maybe, yeah.
Ethan Shanty, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Would you share the closing credits with us, please?
I would be delighted.
No, actually, give us the novelization of the closing credits.
Okay. Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. Bill Hanel is our director of digital services, and our theme music is by the Wickmore Jazz Trio of Plattsburgh. You can find out more about this show and listen to past conversations at ncpr.org/northwards. This is NCPR North Country Public Radio.